Hello and welcome to my video. This is a painting I did 24 hours ago, in fact, for one of my Zoom classes, and they always seem to be popular, trees and how to do things like foliage, which sort of gives the appearance of being quite complex, but it isn't. So I'll show you that again in a minute. So this is the one I did for my class. I'm going to do something similar. It won't be the same, and let's see how it goes. A new board, I think. Okay, nothing quite so daunting as a completely white board. Depends on your point of view, of course. I quite like it. It opens up possibilities. So what are we going to do? I want to show you the simple way to do something that's complicated. I mean, the tree is simple. That's not a problem. It's the foreground. All this sort of tangled weeds and shrubbery and stuff like that. How do you do it quickly? Well, this is how you do it quickly. So let's first of all get a tree in there. As usual, extremely cheap brush. Just, standard hardware store brush. That's me rehearsing. This makes sense in my brain. It may not make sense in yours, but it does in mine. Right, tree. Let's start with the tree. Let's have a nice dark edge here. Okay, so this is going to be the tree. Always remember with trees, keep them strong looking. It wants to be a strong structure. You don't want to produce something that looks as though it's just going to fall over. And so give it some presence. Don't be afraid of big contrasts like this, because it will help you in the end. It's anything that you do that's really strong and dark on a painting, if you're doing this style, can be changed in an instant pretty well, just with a piece of paper. So, and in fact, just doing this gives you an idea of how to make something look sort of round, using the brush. Let the brush do it. Make shapes. So you could do that sort of tree if you want. You know, the type that seems to have that kind of bark that almost looks as though it's wrapped around a tree, but we don't want that because it's just not what we want. That's simple, isn't it? So over this side here, that's going to be the right-hand edge of my tree, and it's going to be an old tree with a bit of character. I hope. Anyway, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So these are my sort of shadows, I suppose. Strong shadows. I'm not using turpentine as usual, I'm just using linseed oil. And my colours are red ochre and sap green. And all I'm doing, really, is just sort of making a bit of a mess, as usual. Let's have a hill over there, like so. This will totally change in a minute. So I've got a limb of the tree, not a limb, the root of the tree coming down here. We'll have a limb up here, but not until I've really put the sky in, or what's actually behind the tree. There may be some foliage behind the tree, as I did in the one I did last night. So we'll see. It's all down to how one feels. This is not really planned in any way at all. It's just let's see how it goes. And I'm certainly not trying to copy the previous one. It's just a similar type. And the horizon is sort of here-ish, so it'll obviously continue over on the left-hand side, approximately the same level. It could be at a slightly different level if you want, because obviously you could have a hill there. And if you don't believe me, a painting that really does work, look at the Mona Lisa. You've got Mona sitting here, there's a face. You've got a landscape over here and you've got a lake, and then over here the lake is lower. It seems to drop. Maybe there's a waterfall behind, but that's the reason why. But anyway, nobody really notices that. So I'm going to get a little bit more oil, and for those of you who are interested in the type of oil, here it is. Now that'll be out of focus, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep an eye on this because I don't want it going out of focus while I'm working. Now that I've actually got something on the board, my camera can auto-focus on that, and it should stay in focus, which means that if I put this here now, That should be in focus. So that's the type of oil I use. Obviously that's in French, and it's basically just linseed oil. And there's nothing else I can say about it really. Just mix it with the paint as if it's just normal medium. So, as usual, I'll try and remember to get some palette shots in. In fact, I might show you. I'm going to show you now, in fact, so that I don't have to remember to do it later. And there it is. I'm using a paper palette to hold the bulk of the paint, which, as you can see, looks like a disgusting mess. Red ochre, that's a little bit of Payne's grey there, and this down here is sap green, and it makes this sort of dark sludge, which when you put it on the picture, on the board, and start wiping it, turns into interesting colours, as I will prove later. And there you can see the extremely cheap brush. There you are, a rare view of my palette. Okay, so what should we do next? Let's have some, leave a bit of a line there. A very, very faint white line I've left there. And this here will represent the foliage that is either behind the tree from other trees, or it's a bit of this tree. Not sure yet, see how it goes. And then over here, I just want a tone. So I'm just going to chuck some paint on there. Doesn't really matter at the moment. This is a toneless painting, so and it's the structural stage for me anyway. So I'm not worried about colour, not at this stage. That takes away some of the stress of painting. You don't have to worry about the colour. Just get the structure right. Okay. It won't be much of a sky, so really all I'm doing, as I said, is getting a tone, and if there's a second sitting on this painting, then I'll start to consider putting some other colours into the sky. But one thing I do want at the moment is a light horizon. So I could leave that like that. It's sort of slightly moody, but we'll see. Don't know. I don't know anything today. You ever get those days when you don't know anything? Right, so let's have a tone up here. I'm not going to worry. I've put a limb from the tree there, but I don't really care about that at the moment, because that can come back any time. See, that's the beauty of this style of painting, is that everything is changeable. Okay, so we have a tone that goes behind the tree. This is the dreadful stage of a painting where everything looks really rough, and this is where people who are watching this video, if they've got this far, this is where they might start turning off, because it's not looking like a nice landscape yet. But that's usually the case with most paintings. They go through a stage of looking extremely rough, and then it all sort of comes together. I've just spotted a mistake I made, I'm going to be honest with you. Just looking at this oil, I thought it was linseed oil, but in fact I've picked up poppy oil. So yeah, it's poppy oil, not linseed oil, but it doesn't matter. It's oily and it mixes with paint, so I'm not too bothered. Okay, so let's get some dark stuff going on in the tree. I don't want the tree to look, you know, like a dead straight line there, so I'm going to put some bumps in it. I like trees with bumps. Somebody mentioned on one of my YouTubes that I paint using horizontal movements, usually like this. I do, particularly when I'm doing landscape, you know, that sort of panoramic stuff, because landscapes tend to be made of lines that go that way. But on the tree, I'm doing verticals, and you could make up this tree doing it this way. You know, it doesn't really matter. But if you want bark quickly, then it makes sense to do the up and down movements here. Leave a few light bits like that. You don't have to do it completely smooth all the way over. It can be quite rough and ready. And it will sort of enhance the painting to have, you know, the general feeling going vertically like so. But there we are. So we've got this sort of dark shape here. I'll come to the landscape bit over there in a minute. I want to get some bark on there first. Then I'll show you how to do the sort of foliage effect down here, and I'll insert a quick picture of the painting that I'm sort of emulating here. And as you can see, it looks complicated and it looks interesting. Well, I think so anyway. It looks interesting. So I'll show you how to do that, and it's extremely quick. It's not a slow process by any means. So let's get some wood effects as quickly as we can. Excuse all the ripping noises. It's just the paper that I use. In fact, I won't be touching a brush for a few minutes. Okay, so it's just the general stuff. It's recycled. Reasonably tough. It's not really like the stuff you get in your kitchen. I think it's a little bit stronger, even though I just tore it, but it's got a bit of substance to it, and it's perfect for what I want. So a rag, you could use rags, but you'd get through an awful lot of rags. And think of the amount of cleaning you'd have to do on the rags to get them so you could use them again. Probably wouldn't work. It wouldn't be awfully planet friendly, I think. So now that I've got this tree here, I know the width of my tree. Remember that pale, that whitish line there is just a border line for me to look at. So, and in fact I will use it. I won't just look at it, I'm going to use it. And I'm going to put a toned line down there. Like so. It's very flat and straight, but that's okay for now. So, a few textures. Let's get some shapes going in here. And don't be too fussy about them. I mean, you notice, yeah, I just did that line there, but it was an unthought line. Just sort of do it and see what it looks like. If it doesn't look right, do it again. It's the same with anything like this in painting. If you paint something and it's wrong, what do you do about it? You don't leave it, do you? You start over again, and or you wipe it off and start again, or you push the paint until it actually starts to be something. So I'm going to try and swoop in a bit with my camera here. You can see what the bark is starting to look like. And if I use my thumb in the paper here, I can sort of, you know, and depending on how much force I use, I can start to sort of draw into the paint a little bit, get some contrasts in there, because that's what the eye wants, craves contrast. And that's how you make bark. Well, it's one way of doing it. This is, I think, the quick way. I'm just going to carry on with that for a moment. So I'm just going to do random sort of shapes and you know, tonal changes. Let's have a lot of light hitting the tree just there, and I think some neutral stuff going on down the bottom there. So I want to get the feeling that there's like a ridge in the tree that comes out towards you here. Hope you're seeing all that. I might have to move the camera again, but I'm working down this area here, so I can probably, you can probably see what's going on. So let's have something growing up from that bit. As I mentioned, you can see how quick the effects can be achieved. While I'm doing this, if you just want to watch, because sometimes I run out of things to talk about, especially when I'm doing something like this, which is going to take a minute or two, and it's a little bit repetitive. The last thing I want to do is to bore anybody. So I'll just, rather than explain exactly what I'm doing, because you can see what I'm doing, I guess, I'll just talk about my Zoom classes. They're on average, I'm doing 2 a month, and it's always on a Saturday. And if you're interested, there'll be a link below. And it's really good fun. You can either just sit and watch, or you can paint something. I'll give you a little critique at the end, give you a few pointers, and hopefully help you to get further on in your painting than you would if you just sort of struggle alone. Sometimes just the odd word or two of advice can set you on the right course. And it's not awfully expensive. Depends on how you do it. If you become a patron via my Patreon page, then depending on how much your investment is, the lessons could be free. If not, you get a reduction. Quite a hefty one too, I think. And it's actually a bit, it's like a painter's club. You know, we sit and chat afterwards for sometimes up to about 2 hours. I can't do that all the time because sometimes I'm just so wiped out at the end of it. It's probably better if I just answer questions and then go and lie down. For those who don't know, I have I'm trying not to mention this too much in my videos, but because I think eventually people get fed up with hearing it. But I've got congestive heart failure, which means that my ticker isn't working as well as it could. And one of the, well, it's not a side effect, it's the main effect, I suppose, is that you get really tired really quickly. You can be fine 1 minute and then suddenly your body just says, okay, time to stop. And it's extremely irritating. It's really, and it's quite stressful, I have to say. It's not a nice thing to have, but you know, 1 minute I didn't have it, and then a minute later I had it. Okay, it was quite a shock. I always had a good, strong, always thought I did anyway, good, strong heart. I used to run a lot when I was younger, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot. But yeah, last November, 1 minute I was fine, next minute I couldn't breathe. So I haven't actually had a heart attack or anything like that, and I hopefully won't. It's the inefficiency of the heart. It's not like I have heart disease. I don't have blockages or anything like that. So Yeah, so if I'm feeling reasonably well, you know, after painting, then I'm happy to sit and chat until people beg me to go away, which I think could happen. Anyway, so look, as here, I'm starting to make some form for these sort of lumps on the side of the tree, these burrs. And you can see how easy it is with no brush whatsoever. It's just using paper, because I like the randomness, you see, because you can make the paper into a bit of a shape, but you never quite know what it'll do when it contacts you painting it. You know, it's a little bit of a surprise, but it's usually a nice surprise. And from that sludgy colour, you can get some quite interesting tones. Now, I've made the tree quite bolt uprightish. Don't really want that. And that will change. There'll be a branch coming out here. And there's no point me doing that branch until I figure out what this dark area is behind it. It's either, as I said, it's either going to be trees that are behind this tree, maybe going off into the distance, I don't know, maybe not. Or it's a bit of foliage connected to this tree, but it's not at the front, it's at the back. It's just sort of, you know, hanging out there. So I'm going to fill the tone up here, so we don't have that light line coming down. And then I'm going to start to try and make the skyline look interesting in a second. Okay, now, still not putting that limb in yet because the sky isn't quite right. Now, the sky in this one isn't awfully important at this stage. It's just a tone. So what should we do next? Let's get a few more little bits of contrast. There's some red, this bit of red here. That's just a tiny amount of red ochre that didn't get mixed in with the rest of the paint, and it's quite acceptable and quite effective to leave things like that. It looks sort of interesting. So if you go out and study a tree trunk, it's amazing all the colours and textures that you'll get on it. You think it's been, you know, something of this sort of size. If I was to scale in the picture, you know, and I was sitting here leaning against a tree, I'd probably be, you know, my head would be here and my legs over there. So you can see it's a chunky tree. So it's been around probably as long as I have. It's going to have interesting, what I call history marks on the tree. You know, all the sort of winters it's sat out there, all the really hot summers, it's all going to add up and give the tree character. So there we are. That's how you can quickly make the effect of dark. And one thing I must say, and I always say this to people, is don't make your tree get too thin too quickly. I see this time and again. Big wide tree going almost like to a twig by the time it gets to here, with these weird sort of octopus limb type branches. You know, trees just aren't like that. Trees are thick all the way up until the tree has decided that it's time to get thin and get some leaves growing on it. So it's, you know, it's got to be strong. So it's they have that about. There's a strength that you have to get in your tree. Got to sort of hint at strengths. So okay, now this is good fun doing this. I really enjoy it actually. I could go on for hours with that, but you know, I like to get my video reasonably manageable. So I want some light down this side of the tree, so I'm going to take quite a bit of paint off there. So that we have a dark side and a light side, or slightly darker this side anyway. It's not a big difference at the moment. If I wanted to do that, show that dramatically, then I would probably do it later when this is dry and apply colour to the side of the tree, you know, some light reflections and all that sort of thing. But for now, I can get a similar effect just by taking paint off, like so. And you get a roundness. You also get a roundness if you have a dark channel down the middle. That works quite well. But I'm not too bothered about that at the moment. Now, so I'm going to sort of sculpt. Will I? Not yet. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to move the camera. Over that way. Oops. Probably enough. Okay, so now this is just to keep me out of the way, and also to work on the sky a little bit here. So I'm just putting in some general shapes of cloud. Nothing too fancy, just some light bits, which if I wanted to add some clouds, you know, using white paint at this stage, I could, because I'm decreasing the amount of paint. So if I put white on this dark bit, it'll mix with the dark and it won't be so white. If I put white on the lighter bits, which have hardly any paint, the white will maintain its strength. So just do that. So this is just a sort of hint of sky. Okay, so that's got a nice light bit at the bottom there and slightly darker at the top. Now that I've got that, and that's pretty well as far as I'm going to go with that, I think. I'm not too worried about it. Right, so let's get the brush again. And what I want to do is just define the edge a little bit here. So I'm going to sort of bump it around a bit, put some dents in it. And then try to get some foliage with a little bit of wind in the air. It's just, you know, how do you get movement? Well, it's all in the wrist. Just got to put the paint on and make it look as though it's moving. Just blur it a little bit. It really is that easy. If you think it's easy, it will be easy. You'll do it much better than if you think it's difficult. And this is not the finished painting. Remember, this is actually for this is sort of for people who don't want to use a pencil or charcoal or anything and just draw with paint, because it's faster, much faster, in fact. Because obviously, you know, you just put a blob on there, and you've covered it. You know, you've got shapes. You don't have to draw every twig and every leaf. And as I said, it's quick and it gives movement. Don't worry about twigs. Just sort of put lumps of foliage that are floating away from the tree a little, you know, occasionally. You can always put a twig in later if you really can't resist it. But for the moment, that's all I need, really. It's just got that sort of feathery look, because, you know, it is tonalism. Now, against the darkness here, that's where I want to put a broken limb. And I've just seen something I don't like up the top there. How did I miss that? Okay, right. Right then, broken limb time. So let's have it there. So, of course, it's a dead limb. Bark's dropped off, very light underneath, and there it is against the backdrop of the dark shadow behind it. And because I've got some paint actually on here as well, as I touch the thing, I can get texture and form into the into this bit of broken tree. Now, one thing that you want to try and avoid, if you want to paint a realistic tree, try to make it so that not every branch comes off the side of the tree, because obviously from a distance that's what you may see, but some branches come from here and come towards you. Now that's a whole new lesson, but what I'm going to try and do on this one is show you that you can actually produce a branch that is coming from more of the front of the tree, and I'm going to do that over here. So let's have one. Let me think. I think we'll do it here. So I'm going to do something up there like that. You can't see much of that because it's very light. So I'm just going to solidify that. Right. So we're going to have this branch here. Nice big stonking great branch that's going to appear to come from the front edge of the tree. Okay, so we're going to start to bring it across here, and the only way we can do that is pure trickery. And the trickery, once I've just got this branch going off the top here, notice the branch isn't getting too thin too quick. Okay, right. Now I want that to look as though it's originating here, not there. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do with this. So the only way I can do it quickly is to add some light here. If I just add a little bit of light there. You can see, I hope, quick look in the camera, you can see that this branch is coming from there because of that light area. I'll exaggerate it a little bit by just making it a little stronger, and then maybe let's you know that thing where you get like an elbow or an armpit, a tree armpit. Or maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree. Maybe armpit is not right. Let's just keep it as a bend. So there's some light catching the top of this limb. And I'll carry that up there just a little bit, like so. And enhance the bend here. So now, as you hope, it's starting to look as though it's coming from our side of the tree. And it really is that easy. I'm not trying to be precise. Don't be precise. Even if you were going to be precise, this is not the stage to do that. What you need to do, or what you could do, I hate telling people what they have to do, but works for most people, is do everything quite roughly and loosely. And then once you've got that working for you, you can stop. And if you are the type of person who just wants to be a colour photocopier for the rest of your life, you can then attack that with a minute brush and paint every bug. But you know, can be very clever, but it's not for me. Not anymore, anyway. I had my share of doing stuff like that. And life really is too short. Okay, so that's actually, I'm quite pleased with that limb. It's looking quite well connected to the trunk, except, okay, there. Now, drawing skills. I know that there will be people who will look at this and they'll say, oh, there's no way I could do that. Well, that's obviously not what you should be thinking. You should be thinking, I'd like to have a go at that. And only then, once you get through the I can't do it phase and move on to the I'd like to try and do that, because I think I can, things will start to change for you. Okay, so just put some light back there, just behind that limb. That will bring it forward even more. Good. Right, I like the way this is going. And I think before I move on to the landscape, I'm going to do a little bit more fiddling up here, just to get some lights and darks. Look for the darks that you've already got. Do I need to zoom in? I think I might zoom in just a bit there. Look at the lights and darks that you've already got, and most of them are accidental, and just enhance them. So there's a dark bit there, so I'm going to put some light next to it. Light and dark really like to cuddle up together. And there they are, cuddling. So it's starting to, and I have to say, accidentally look as though there's a bit of a dent in the tree there, which is fine. Quite like that. It's got a little rotten spot. So I'll enhance that effect. And to do that, again, piece of paper, a few up and down movements, scraping away and pressing it, so as you can see the whole thing move there. Occasionally, and sometimes not pressing it, just sort of skimming over it. So if I add that light down that edge there, it'll look as though that's going in even more. And that's a desired effect. So there we go. How to paint a tree. Let's have a little bit of light just catching there, I think. Now this stump thing here, this limb, have I still got the limb in the picture? Yes, good. I want to make that even more interesting. So I'm going to add light to the end of it. A little bit of light catching that, just to enhance it a bit. And the same there on that edge and there. And while I'm on it, this is the stage that I really enjoy now, because I start to, it's starting to look like something, and it's like, this is the fun part. I know that nothing too bad can go wrong with this now. It's like, not that it would anyway, and actually not that I care. So now I can start doing things like this. I mean, doesn't that just drive you crazy with passion? So these sort of, the twigs, I'm at the twig phase now. Let's have more twigs. Let's have a little bit of a twig there, like so. And I think we should have some more bumps down this edge. Let's have a few things going on there. Who knows what it is, don't know. It's just stuff. It's just texture and stuff. And maybe I'll go back to the trunk in a moment. I think I need to start on the landscape over there. And what else shall I do? And again, there will be twigs over this side here, but I think I'll do that right at the end. I think we need to push forward a bit here. There's just a few little bits down there. And for those who have seen my videos before, eventually, in a minute or two, I'll be doing my whipping thing, which is always good fun. It's nothing like a bit of whipping, and it's the whipping that makes the grass. So that's just a few light spots in there. Okay, so there we go. Let's leave that for a minute, and I'll just change the camera angle. Okay, so the base of the tree. Complicated foliage. I'm using exactly the same colours that I've used for the rest of the picture, except I will chuck in a little bit more of the red ochre. Not everywhere, just in the odd spot or two. So I think we'll have it here. Now you may not see much in the way of red in that, but it'll show in a moment. In a moment, that's a new word. I like to invent a new word on every video, so in a moment. It's not a very good one, that though. Okay, let's try and get a bit more red. There we go. Let's have it down there. Now, if you were painting masses of complex foliage and grass and stuff down the bottom of this tree, you could, if you wanted, if you have nothing better to do for the next 5 years, you could get a teeny weeny little brush and start painting every strand of whatever it is. And it would be tedious, wouldn't it? So you can either do that, or you can get most of it done in the next minute and a half. So all I'm doing is putting the colour down, and you can see, I hope, it's quite a dark colour, but you can see that there are different tones and colours happening there. They're quite subtle. Don't forget, this is the stage of the painting where I'm working out structure. Depending on how it goes, I could actually stop after I finished all this, you know, this stage, and I could just say, well, that's it. That's a very monotone, toneless painting. Or I can get some grass in it and make it look absolutely fascinating. So I'm going to go for fascinating, I think. Now, I'm getting quite a lot of oil in this. And the reason I said that is because I just spilt too much oil on the palette. But it's okay. It's not to the... I've sort of done it to the point where I need to give up. It's just slightly more runny. There we go. Okay, so I've covered the bottom there. Next thing to do is get a piece of paper, and then I'm going to smudge above that. Put a tone in between the foreground and the horizon. Pick up a little bit of paint off there, rub that in. So this is turning into a lesson over here now. We've had our tree bark lesson, so now we're into, before I put the grasses in, we're into a bit of a perspective lesson. How to make things look far away. Tone them down and blur them, always works. Have a bit of a blur and have less saturation of colour. Unless, of course there is always an unless, isn't there? You could do a general reduction in saturation. But you don't have to sort of go all the way down, because there could be a case where you have a lot of light on the sky, so the landscape in the distance is going to look quite dark against it, rather than being toned down. I hope that makes sense. We'll see in a minute when I start to do that. So here, now, here's a danger. This is something people, they've got this area, they've got to fill that with that tone. What do? Do I go really carefully so I don't destroy the tree? No. What you do is you don't worry about the tree. You get the background tone to where you want it. The tree will go back on later. So I've sort of you can't really see much, but I've obliterated that edge a little bit, but it doesn't matter. It's always fixable. So that the horizon line, let's try and make it look sort of interesting. I've got a little bit to fill in over here too on the left where my hand is. That's got to be fixed in a minute. So let's just get an interesting horizon. So again, just to reiterate what I just said, you can have dark against light. So that's what I might go for, I think. So let's have, I think we'll have a hill. And then we'll turn it into some sort of pasture land or something anyway. Now, the thing with getting a feeling of size and distance, if you want to give a feel of a large area, it's better if you go for big sweeps with the brush rather than short sweeps. Again, here, it doesn't matter about the tree. Pull it into the tree a little bit. And then when you put the tree back, it'll look as though you've gone along the edge really carefully to actually stop before you get to the tree. In fact, you haven't. You're cheated. And don't think of it as cheating. Think of it as a trick of the trade. It's just so that you know. It's the same as masking. You know, if you're using watercolour, you can paint latex onto a piece of paper for the bits that you want left white. So you would paint this latex on, paint over it with a wash, and then peel the latex off, and you'll be left with pure white shapes. This is a similar sort of thing. This is masking, but with a bit of a difference. Okay, so we've got sort of interesting streaks going across there. We don't have to do much to it really at the moment, just shapes. So in fact, very quickly we've even got, we've got quite a good bit of distance showing there. It's not quite the way I want it, but it's getting there. So I'm going to add a bit more red. And I'm just going to solidify the ground a little bit here, but not totally solid. I'm just putting some broken up paint with red ochre. Not much green in that, just a few, literally a few spots, that's all, like so. Okay, so this is a good basis now for me to get whipping. Before I start whipping, what I want to do is I want to resolve the edge of this tree. So I'm going to do it with paper. And I'm going to continue this edge here down right next to where I'm painting the backdrop, the distance. So there you see now these lines seem to look as though they're going behind the light edge of the tree. Okay, that's looking pretty cool. I'm actually quite happy with that. Over here on the left, I mean, I need to do something, but I'm just wondering what to do. Let's see. I'm gonna use the brush. I think sometimes I wouldn't do it. I would do it all with paper, but I think I'll just carry that across and keep it really simple, and just have something in the distance like so, and a few bits of tone underneath. Can you see that? I think you probably can. Yep. I'm not worried about it looking perfect because I'll be going over it a little bit in a minute. Let's make it lean the other way because I don't want it leaning off the picture. I'd rather it lent that way to keep the eye in. That's better. Okay, now down here, just to lose some of that white. It's quite nice, but I don't want it all there. Okay, there we are. So there's a hint of something going on in the background there. And what I will probably do is, because the tree is dark, is just bring that up a bit so it contrasts against the tone, like so. And then I'll add some dark twigs and stuff growing up there. Maybe, in fact, we could do it this way. Let's turn the brush around. This is the dark side, this is the lighter side. I've already got dark on the painting. Let's zoom in. It'd be nice if you saw that, I think. Of course, it depends on your definition of nice. There are nicer things, but you know what I mean. Okay, well, there we are. That's nice and close up. Okay, right. So I'm going to use the lighter side of the brush, which basically is the side with least paint. It's not, I haven't mixed any colour. And I'm going to do this thing where I do this trembling thing, and hopefully you'll see it clearly too. So I'm just going to literally just to feather it a bit. So it gives the eye something, the eye and the brain something to think about. So your brain will look at that and it'll say, well, it's obviously stuff growing here that's right in shadow next to the tree, and that's what those little feathery bits are. Let's hope that's what it looks like anyway. There we are. While I'm zoomed in on that bit, I'm going to just add a few light bits below that to give it a bit more depth. better. Right, now I think it's going to be whipping time. So let's move the camera back. I think I might give you a bit more view of the bottom there, because then the whipping part will be much clearer. Either clearer or more clear. It's one of those sayings I can never remember which is the right way to do it. Say it. Okay, so before I do that, I want to put. Where are we? Okay. Just want a little bit of darkness there. And do I need any more? I think I want a bit down there. There's nothing precise about it, you see. Just adding it where I think it might be needed. Okay. When I finish the whipping, oh no, actually no, I fib. I'm not going to do it when I finish the whipping. I'm going to do something now. Over here, I'm going to put a bit of a ridge with just a hint of something growing there. I want something to lead you across. Just a few shapes. Yeah, I think that works. Okay, good. Now, whipping. Okay, there's no big mystery. It's just a piece of paper. I've shown you on my videos hundreds of times, probably. And all I'm going to do is beat the living daylights out of it with several of these. And the trick is just to screw that up really tight so that it becomes quite solid. You can only use it for a few whips, then you've got to make a new one. And it's just a flick like that. So I'll start off with a few of them. Now, so long as it's taking the paint off and giving you those grass shapes, can you see them? Yeah, I think you can. It's working. When this gets too saturated with paint, it'll stop working, and all you'll be doing is whipping a pile of paint. But as long as it's making light lines, like so, then it's doing its job. And this is, I tell you, you know, if you're into painting lots of grasses and stuff, this is far more fun than painting every strand. And don't forget, they don't always grow up, they go sideways as well, so put the odd sideways one in. There we go. Now this edge looks a bit cack-handed along here. That's deliberate at the moment. Now, it sort of looks okay, but it's not the, it hasn't reached the level of okay that I want. It's a substandard okay, so just make another whippy bit. And what I aim for when I paint trees like this, by the way, just before I carry on whipping, I'm just making up another one of these, is the feeling of weight. A tree is an extremely heavy object, and you want to give that feeling that it's connected to the planet and that it's actually going into the ground. You know, none of this, don't make the roots too prominent and, you know, well defined, because they will disappear behind grass. And that's the effect I want. I mean, I could do a little bit, not much, down here. I could bring the shape of the tree down like so, just a little bit there maybe. What else? A bit here and there, and then maybe a branch of it coming off that way. And I think that's all I'll do for rootery. Oh, you see now, so it's looking anchored, you know, it's anchored to the planet, which is always a good thing with a tree, particularly if you've parked your car near it. So there we go, a few bits of grass over that. Now it's picking paint up, and I don't really mind that because I want a few up here. but not many at the moment because I've got a different plan for that edge. Okay. Right. So as you can see, I hope, I always add these I hopes just in case you can't, but I think you can. You can see that foliage needn't be so daunting. And something I did mention, and I have mentioned before, but I'm, you know, getting on in years, so I'm going to repeat stuff. Foliage like this is how a lot of the old masters painted foliage at the beginning of their painting, to get the guts of the texture done quickly. Because in the old days, of course, you know, if you didn't produce paintings, you didn't eat. There's none of this sitting around for 6 months painting your picture. They were like the commercial artists of the day, so they wanted to bang out paintings. So they would use things to make texture and then go over it with a small brush when it's dry to add leaves and stuff. And, you know, seed heads, that sort of thing. So when this is dry, you can do anything to it with other colours over the top, and if your other colour goes wrong, just wipe it off, and you'll be left with this image. Now the plan for the top edge of this is just this. It's just get a nice bit of texture, right? Sort of as random looking as possible, and just touch it along the edge there. Because I don't want blobs like plant. That's, you know, nature is completely random, so make it random. Break it all up. Keep moving the paper as you dab it so that you don't produce a repeat pattern. And then I'm going to dab it over the grass stems, and well, it's not all grass, of course. It's weeds, and you know, just to break it up a bit. And talking of seed heads, it's quite easy to start them off at this stage. You just make the paper into like a flat coin shape almost. So it's that flat edge there that you're going to use, and you just touch it. I'm going to zoom in so you can see that actually working. So let's get in there. Okay, so we'll take that particular strand there. It's pretty thin, but anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that I can add a seed head to the top of that just by touching it, like so. I rest my case. So I'll do that in a few other places, just the odd touch. Just makes it interesting. Now when that's dry, you could say, well, that's actually I don't know, it could be a blue flower. So you just touch a few bits of blue on it, you know, or red or whatever colour. And it'll start to look interesting and colourful. There we are. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back just a bit. It's looking quite nicely untidy and messy, which is what I want. So a few more dabs down here. I was sitting in my lounge yesterday evening, and there's quite a big wall. We use the lounge to watch Netflix with a video projector type thing. But behind, you know, the wall that we project onto is big. I was thinking to myself, this picture, painted about 8 feet by 4 feet, could be quite interesting. Just reposition the camera a bit. And I thought, how long would it take me to paint a picture 8 foot by 4, like this? I think it would be about, I don't know, 4 days maybe. But wouldn't that be fun? Was the question at the moment, the question I ask myself is, would I have the energy? I must say, I'm starting to flag a little bit here. The other interesting thing I find is, you know, because this dastardly health problem, is that when I'm painting, I don't feel so bad. I actually feel much better. It's like painting takes over a part of my brain that is either stressed by what's wrong with me or fatigued, and it does give me a little bit more energy. And in fact, when I was first diagnosed, and I made a few videos, and there were one or two where I just had to stop talking and cut out blank spaces in the video because I just couldn't speak. I just run out of energy. And I'm obviously better than I was because now I don't need to do that. I can actually just keep talking. The bit that really gets me, I think, is more than anything, is standing up for too long. That's a bit of a killer, that. So there we are. That's looking that's quite interesting now. So if I let me think, have I done enough texture in the foreground? I've no idea how long this video will be. They always tend to come out about an hour. I think it's because I normally produce a painting in an hour, so that could be why. But looking at that, I think maybe that's pretty well it. As I said, anything else that I do would be on here just to sort of enhance the tree. Oh, yeah, I know what I was going to show you. I have a rigger brush, which I'm going to demonstrate. Okay, so there's the top of the picture. Now, yeah, the tree definitely needs a lot of work done to it, so I'm going to just bung in some twigs. There's a knack to this. Two knacks. One is, don't worry about it. In other words, if it goes wrong, who cares? You can fix it. And the other one is the way that you actually make your lines. This is a rigger. Okay, it's an extremely thin brush. It's called a rigger because they use these to paint rigging. And it's also a very good lettering brush, actually. It's very excellent for lettering. So, twigs. I have a technique with twigs, and it's like short movements like that. So I'll demonstrate. So, and I very rarely will start the twig where it's growing. So if I'm going to have a twig that grows out of this going up there, I am more likely to start above it. And you notice, see, I do it in several stages. Can you see it? Nope. Yeah, I'm going to zoom in. You can see that now, I think. So yeah, it's quite runny paint. I do it in stages so that there's like a knot in the wood, and I use those to make other things grow out of, from. Sort of, let's do one here. Let's have one coming in on the left. So there's one there like so. Okay, so that's obviously growing out on the underside of that limb. And it could be a bit of dead wood, but it doesn't matter. So you notice there are these places where I stopped. There, and there. How much of that can you see? I have to keep going back, checking. Right, you can see that. So this one here, okay, so that I would put one coming out off that, maybe just going off the edge of the painting. And then what have we got here? We've got one there. So we could do one that goes from that across there. Like so. We could thicken that just a little bit there because it just needs a little bit more substance to it, like so. And let's have another one here and another one there. Just a ghost image of it, in fact, just the odd hint. Let's have one that basically goes down that way. Like so. Yeah, I think you saw a bit of that. And I could also use it to go along the edge of the main tree trunk and just put in a few sort of bumpy edgy bits. Technical word for the edge of a tree, edgy bit. Like so, just to stop it from being just a straight line with no character to it. You need bumps and character. So that's how I would add dark twigs. I'm not going to add lots of twigs, but it could be interesting if I did. If I had a mass of twigs coming off it, that could be quite interesting. That's enough of my dark twigs. Oh, except here, we've got this thing. I'll move the camera yet again. Okay, so we've got that light twig coming off here. Now, it would be a light twig because it's next to something dark. As it moves away across the picture to be against something light, that twig would appear dark. So we'll just do a few little tiny shapes there. So even though it changes colour, it still looks as though it's connected to the other part of the twiggery. So a little bit more, another piece of paper. And I'm just going to add a few more light twigs because it's looking a bit sparse. Now this is slightly different. I don't use this the way I would use the rigger. I would tend to start away from where it grows. So I would have one here at the top. Just make sure you can see. Yep, I think you can. And then I'll just bring it down and plug it into the tree. Like so. I like the idea of working from the top down because you're using the gravity to bring your arm down. So you're not fighting gravity. All you're doing is dropping your arm and waggling it slightly. It's much easier, trust me on that. Let's have one that connects there. And another one that goes off the end, just to be different. I did exactly what I said I wouldn't do. And let's have a little something there. Another one here, something there. So you can see how you can build it up and make your tree look interesting and texturous. Texturous, another word. Texturous or textured. Bumpy, yeah, you can make your tree bumpy. So again, contrasts there. I have to keep turning to look at the camera to make sure that you're seeing, because sometimes I forget that I'm videoing and I'm talking away and I'm painting on a part of the picture that you can't see. So I've got to be mindful of that. So in here I'm just going to do a few more little contrasty bits there. Make it interesting. Yep. Okay, so let's zoom back a bit. See what sort of mess we've made today. It's looking quite woody. And let's have a look at the distance. That little trick there that I did with the brush, where I curled the brush around. It's like a snake across the landscape, and it leads the eye in. Takes you to where I want you to go. Now let's have a look down here. So there we are. We've got some nice foliage stuff. I can't give you the Latin name for any of those weeds, but one of them could be Weedus colossus disgustingus. A little bit of stinkwort there. Nice bit of bladderwort in the front. But anyway, whatever they are, there they are. Hope you enjoyed this video. I think I'm going to stop now. I probably will do a second part to this, and I'll add some colour to it, but that'll be in a few weeks when it's dry. So for now, that's pretty well it, I think. So thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've learned something. That's why I do these, so that people learn stuff. And Oh yeah, if you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do, it helps, and big time. And I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.